Hi, everybody out there. My name is Sera. I am a man in his early 30s, and I struggle with PMO. Even to this day, I struggle with it. However, I have overcome it. And yes, while I suffer from some relapses here or there, I have really even started to put it behind me. But why am I talking to you about this? Well, chances are, more than likely, if you have clicked on this video, you struggle with this same addiction. And my heart goes out to you. I can't even begin to describe how my heart goes out to you. Because I've been there. Almost any scenario that you can think of, whether it's, the frequency, whether it's something that you viewed, whether it's fetishes, it doesn't matter. I more than likely have been there, or I have done so much research into this addiction that it doesn't surprise me. But again, this is more to help you out because I've also experienced that pain that you have experienced as well. But really, to begin, I wanted to share my story. More so for you to hear how bad it can get if you think it's not that big of a deal. To share with you the feelings, really the shared feelings of guilt, of pain, of anxiety, to share what it can do to your life, but also to give you some hope and some confidence. So to begin, let me just kind of define some things, and then we'll go into this story. PMO stands for pornography, masturbation to orgasm. And I'll get again into my story a little bit into how everything developed. So mine began at the age of around 11 and 12 when I first brought myself to orgasm. It was by accident, as many of these stories start, and it's the clearest first memory that I have. I think it had started we had a book, an innocent child's book, and it had pictures of a woman in a bathing suit, and I started developing feelings for this picture, of course, and again, I was a child, I didn't understand what was happening, and I started to self-pleasure until one day, because it didn't happen right away, I brought myself to orgasm. And all I knew was I felt really good doing that. And I wanted this feeling again. And at first, I would say there was a little tiny bit of shame, but for the most part, the shame wasn't really there. So I started doing it again and again and again. Now, after a while, even if I wasn't fully aware of what I was doing, you at least start to recognize that this behavior is not normal because you don't see your family doing it. You don't see your friends doing it or talking about it. So even still, there's a tiny bit of you that knows that what I'm doing here is not right. So the frequency, of course, started to increase. It started to, it went from maybe once a week to multiple times a week to multiple times a day, even. And my family life was fairly normal, we were kind of latchkey kids, but for the most part, we were fine. We weren't rich, but we weren't dirt poor either. We were probably just right there in the middle class. And so I didn't have major events happen in my life that brought on this. I didn't have anything bad happen to me. In fact, I didn't really get involved with pornography until much, much later, which of course we'll get to in a second. But as I grew up, of course, I started to self-pleasure more and more and more. Now, during these days, there was no internet or social media yet. Or at least we did not have a computer at home at the time. And so this was mostly done with, honestly, my imagination. I would fantasize about, scenarios. I would fantasize about women that I would see, girls that I would see at the time. And that's kind of how it started. But since I also started this at that age of adolescence, that's when puberty kicked in. And so, again, the number of times I would do it every day started to increase, from once a day to twice a day to sometimes 3 times a day, maybe even more. I don't think that happened too frequently, but I would venture to say there were times when maybe I hit 4 or even 5 times a day. Now, my family never confronted me about this. In fact, I think I actually went to them to talk about it when I was around 15 or 16 years old. But after I did, they didn't really follow up with me after the discussion. So what ended up happening was the guilt kind of forced me to stop a little bit, but then I just went right back at it again. Now, I would say it stayed like this until I was 18 years old when I had my first serious girlfriend. And as you can imagine, things, got really heavy. We didn't indulge in any sexual acts, but there was definitely heavy makeout sessions and so forth. And really all that I would do was, after something happened, I would come home and then self-pleasure. So you could say the urges started to get more intense at that time, around 18 years old. But what happened after, of course, we ended up breaking up was, I feel like I started to grow up a little bit, and I wanted a little bit of self-control in my life. So I started to actively at least try to not self-pleasure as frequently. Or maybe the hormones started to die down a little bit. But I think when I entered my next phase of life, when I moved out at 19 years old, the amount of times I would do so would drop, probably at first per day, and then at least per week they started to drop. But what also started happening was I would start to engage in edging, even if I wouldn't bring myself to orgasm. And what edging is it pretty much is what it sounds, is a person will self-pleasure, but not to all the way to orgasm. So pretty much you build up all that dopamine, and then you kind of just let it, go away. And a lot of people that struggle with this say that this can even be worse than just full-blown bringing yourself to all the way to orgasm. So, if anything, I started to do both at the same time. Now, I got married. In between that, in my early 20s to mid 20s, I dated a few times, but I pretty much just had a normal life, maybe 1 or 2 girlfriends, but nothing very serious until I got married at 25. And then I had sexual relations for the very first time. Now, my plan was, I had thought that because I was getting married and now starting to have sexual relations, that my PMO urge would just go away. I wouldn't really have to deal with it anymore. I was still indulging in edging, though. But I kind of thought, the more and more I have sex, then that means that eventually I won't need these urges anymore and they'll just go away. But the sad truth of the matter, and something that we're definitely going to keep talking about as we move along in this podcast, is PMO affects your relationships so badly. So bad that you don't even realize it. You become so self-indulgent, so self-absorbed. Sex just kind of becomes something to relieve that pressure or stress, and nothing really more than that. That's the sad truth. But we're going to talk much more about this in the future. But again, sad to say, it didn't go away at all. Years into us being married, I still was struggling with it. And at that time, I probably was, I guess you could say, relapsing, full-blown relapsing once or twice a week. But edging was probably, I would still say, every single day. Now, of course, this bode very bad for my marriage. And about 7 years into our marriage, my wife asked me to move out first. That only lasted a little while, but then when I came back home, she ended up moving out completely across the country. It was very hard on me. It was very tough on me. And at that point, let me rewind a little bit because I had come clean about a year before that about my addiction. Because at that point, which leads me to the next part here, I had started to engage in pornography, real pornography, for the first time in my life. Now, we're going to talk much more about pornography later on, because there is definitely several different types of pornography, and some of them deal with fetishes as well. So there's much more to this story. I kind of want to just keep it kind of general in this story, to kind of just show you the overall arc of how it went. But a year before I came clean to my wife, I started actual pornography viewing. It wasn't very regular, but the times that I did indulge in it, as many people who struggle with pornography can attest to, it messes you up so badly because that dopamine rush just gets electrified, to levels you couldn't even imagine. And again, some people say well, when I watch pornography, nothing happens. Or I'll just watch it every once in a while, but it's not really part of my life. But again, you have to remember your audience here. We are talking to sex addicts, ones that cannot stop these impulses and fed these impulses for so long that it affects their life. So when you introduce and add pornography to them, it is so damaging. And that's what happened to me. Like I said, I didn't even indulge in it that much. But the very few times that I did, it just affected me so badly. So eventually, I came clean to my wife. We tried to work it out. And like I said, about a year later, sad to say, we ended up separating. However, this is where the good news actually starts to set in. I went to somebody that I actually found on YouTube, a coach, and I begged for their help. And he did almost a total reconstruction on me, from everything, from the way I viewed my life to how I viewed work to finding new hobbies. I completely started to transform my life. Now I can say I am clean. I still struggle. Don't get me wrong. Addicts still struggle. And that at first kind of stopped me from even making this channel. But honestly, I want to keep going. Even if it still is a struggle for me, I just want to reach out and try to help as many people as possible. Now, before I kind of wrap up, this is the overall look. Again, I started at 11, 12 years old. I was about 31 when everything kind of came out. So that means I struggled with PMO for 20 years. 20 years I struggled with it. Edging is still a huge problem for me. But I have worked hard to even stop that and to keep that out of my life. And I know that you can too. It is possible. This is going to be kind of the mantra that I have on this channel from here on out, where I just want to say, nobody is too far gone. If anything, let my life be proof of that. Nobody is too far gone. You can always stop and change your life. That kind of ends my story for now. It's still ongoing. Like I said, it's still a fight that I have every day. And I look forward to it Every single day I challenge myself. Now for this channel, this is going to be a once a week channel. We might start incorporating more videos, but at least once a week, I'm going to sit down and talk about different subjects with PMO. I'm going to start with the basics, maybe some things that a lot of people who struggle with this addiction know, but maybe you don't know. Then I'll go into the deeper kind of mental, emotional, psychological roots of PMO, and then end it with, well, what does ending PMO involve? So we're going to get a nice structure down. If you know anybody or yourself, who struggles with this, please encourage them to tune into this channel. I want to help as many people as possible, and feel free to comment. I will try to keep up with as many as I possibly can. But I'm so excited for this venture. I look forward to it, and I just hope that it will grow to more and more and more people. I thank you so much. It took a lot of courage to do this and to follow through on it. But I'm very much hoping that this will just create more of a positive effect on the world. This also, one last thing, this podcast is going to be very raw. I'm going to try very hard. In fact, I didn't have anything written in front of me. I want to make this as emotional as possible for you, because I know how it is. I would listen to people who had a full-blown presentation, or they'd be at a talking seminar or whatever. And my teacher, my coach that helped me, the reason why I was drawn to him was he would just sit down and talk, so it was much more down to earth. And that's the effect that I want to have with you all as well. So I hope you enjoyed this very first episode, and I will talk to you all again soon. Take care.